Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller series named Billionaires Bunker Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a privileged heir named Max, who is easily granted bail, even after being sentenced to prison for killing someone in a car accident. This is all thanks to his father's incredible influence. However, upon seeing his father, Raphael, Max feels no relief. Instead, his eyes are filled with hostility. Equally grave, Raphael doesn't wait for Max to speak before dropping a bombshell. He informs Max that with geopolitical tensions rising, a world war is imminent. Fortunately, he has prepared everything for their family, securing a place in a shelter, a fortified bunker hidden deep underground where Max's mother and grandmother are already waiting. On the way to the shelter, a curious Max asks his father how he learned about the apocalypse. Raphael patiently explains that he met a high-ranking military official at his tennis club who warned him of the tense global situation. Through this contact, Raphael connected with the operators of the bunker. To secure entry for his family, he invested tens of millions of euros into the project, which took 7 years to complete. Known as Kimera Underground Paradise, it was built within a natural cave over 40 million years old and designed to house 45 families. The bunker is virtually indestructible. Not even the most devastating nuclear war could breach it. As they are talking, the two arrive at the bunker. The decor is minimalist, yet futuristic. A staff member greets them, assigns them a personal locker, and instructs them to store all personal belongings, including their phones. Max finds this strange, but the staff member explains it is a necessary measure to prevent the shelter's location from being exposed. Accepting the explanation, they place their items in the locker, severing their connection to the outside world. Raphael gives Max a tour of the facility. Though the design is simple, every detail is meticulously planned. The space feels spacious and bright, even with 45 families inside. To ensure the residents' peace of mind, the shelter provides protective suits, radiation counters, and a virtual assistant that can change the room's scenery on command, making the environment feel more like a luxury resort than a doomsday bunker. Soon after, Max is reunited with his mother. Unlike his tense reunion with Raphael, Max shares a close bond with his mother, and they embrace warmly. This tender moment is shattered by a breaking news report. The Russian Minister of Defense has declared a recent attack an act of war. Max is stunned to see a world war actually unfolding. Before he can process it, he sees another person who stirs complicated emotions in him. Falcon, the father of his late ex-girlfriend, Anna. Whenever their eyes meet, Max instinctively looks away, overwhelmed with guilt. The story flashes back 3 years to Max's 19th birthday. He and his girlfriend Anna were joyriding when the car suddenly spun out of control and crashed. Anna was fatally injured, and for reasons unknown, Max fled the scene. He has been haunted by the belief that he was responsible for her death ever since. He was eventually found by the police, and the court convicted him of multiple charges, including manslaughter and hit and run, sentencing him to life in prison. For a top-tier heir born with a silver spoon, prison was a living nightmare. He was thrust into a brutal world where his wealth meant nothing, forced into a life of humiliating survival. Failure to pay protection money led to a fate worse than death. Inmates would turn anything into a weapon, torturing him until he was covered in wounds. They even stuffed him into a washing machine, his screams drowned out by the churning water, only to be pulled out and mocked like a drowning dog. Amid this endless suffering, Max had a sudden awakening, a rebirth of sorts. He stopped dwelling on his misery and began to build his strength. He rose from the taunts and ridicule a changed man, filled with a new fighting spirit, and tirelessly trained his body. One day, after winning 15 consecutive fights, he established his dominance in the prison, no longer the coward anyone could bully. Just as he was adapting to prison life, his father, who had been absent for 3 years, suddenly intervened and secured his release on bail. Max couldn't understand Raphael's change of heart, but he could never forget what his father had done. He would never forgive him. Just then, Falcon's voice pulls Max back from his memories. Falcon seems to have forgiven him, having since remarried a woman named Mimi, whom he introduces to Max. They interact like old friends. Shortly after, Max sees a young girl who stirs his heart once more. Her name is Asia, the younger sister of his deceased girlfriend, Anna. From Asia, Max learns that her mother passed away from overwhelming grief not long after Anna's death. In that moment, Max realizes Falcon's calm demeanor is a facade. It's impossible that he has truly forgiven the man who destroyed his family. Later, the two families sit together, chatting as they once did. Growing impatient with the lack of service, they are informed by a staff member that the bunker operates on a self-service buffet system. Max's grandmother is outraged. Having been waited on her entire life, she can't believe that after paying a fortune, she is expected to get her own food like a commoner. The staff member apologizes, explaining that limited space prevents them from hiring more service staff, but the grandmother remains furious. Just then, the bunker's director, Manurva, appears. In a tone that brooks no argument, she states the limitations of the facility, and then delivers more grim news about the world outside. Hearing about the fierce battles raging above, the complaining residents fall silent. After all, survival is what matters most now. Manurva's firm attitude doesn't provoke rebellion. Instead, it earns their respect and compliance, which was precisely her goal. She knows that with these powerful individuals, only an assertive posture can maintain order. To keep their sharp minds from wandering, she has implemented a series of mandatory social activities, such as communal dining and requiring them to clear their own dishes. But this is not enough. That night, as everyone sleeps, the bunker is rocked by a violent tremor, followed by blaring alarms. Manurva's voice comes over the intercom, instructing everyone to proceed immediately to the dome, which she calls the safest area in the entire facility. Startled awake, the residents instinctively rush to the elevators and ascend to the dome. Manurva is waiting for them. Standing in the center, she solemnly announces that a nearby area has just been hit by a nuclear strike, and the tremor was the resulting shockwave. To prove her words, the dome's massive screen plays footage of the recent nuclear explosion. Suddenly, the screen flickers, and the bunker shakes violently again, another nuclear blast. As more countries join the devastating world war, nuclear missiles streak across the sky from all directions. Soon, the surveillance feeds one by one go black, suggesting the world outside has been utterly annihilated. Staring at the dark screens, the residents feel a wave of relief, understanding that the surface is now a dead zone. It is in this moment that Max's father turns to him and solemnly tells him he never meant to betray him. It turns out that it was Raphael's idea for Max to flee the accident scene. On that fateful night, as a distraught Max held the dying Anna, his father told him to hide until the situation blew over. Max had been drinking and had used illicit drugs, and being caught at the scene would have had dire consequences. Under the influence of alcohol, Max dazedly agreed. He never expected that his own father would later take the stand in court and testify against him, revealing the drunk driving and hit and run. This testimony sealed Max's fate, leading to his life sentence. He vowed never to forgive his father. But now, Raphael explains that while he initially wanted to protect Max at all costs, as the trial neared, he realized that shielding him with lies would prevent his son from ever truly growing up. So he made a heart-wrenching decision and told the truth in court. Despite his father's explanation, Max cannot bring himself to forgive him. Suddenly, Manurva's voice interrupts their conversation. She informs everyone that the bunker has lost all contact with the outside world, presumably because the antenna was destroyed. She announces she is sending the head of security and another employee outside to inspect the damage, equipped with a camera so everyone can see the situation. Soon, an image appears on the screen. Two figures in hazmat suits slowly open the bunker door. A searing orange glow floods in. The sky is shrouded in a thick yellow smog and dust fills the air. Even through the screen, the residents feel a sense of suffocation, making them even more grateful for the steel fortress protecting them. The audio feed is filled with the workers' heavy, ragged breathing as they describe the horrific conditions. A moment later, the radiation detector goes off the charts, and the air temperature hits high. The head of security lets out a final scream before the screen cuts to black. The terrifying scene leaves everyone in shock. Too scared to return to their rooms, they choose to sleep on the floor of the dome, their former arrogance completely gone. This is exactly the result Manurva wanted. Unseen by the others, a triumphant smile crosses her face. Back in the control room, she and her staff erupt in celebration. The wealthy fools have fallen for it completely. The control room monitors show the truth. Outside, the world is as peaceful and serene as ever. It turns out, there is no apocalypse. It was all an elaborate hoax, meticulously crafted by Manurva and her team. From the beginning, Manurva knew the key to the scam was making the rich believe the end of the world was truly here. With the recent shifts in global politics, they didn't have to try very hard. A little exaggeration was all it took to fill the billionaires with anxiety. When she felt the time was right, she sent out an emergency alert about the imminent apocalypse. Primed by the previous buildup, they unhesitatingly brought their families to the bunker. To enhance the realism, Manurva hired actors to rush past the billionaires with luggage as if they too were fleeing. This detail amplified their panic. Then, display screens in nearby shops were programmed to show news reports of escalating international tensions, further convincing them that a new world war was about to break out. Once they boarded the helicopters, they were completely under Manurva's control. A broadcast inside the helicopter informed them that airspace was being restricted and all civilian flights were grounded. Gripped by fear, they didn't question anything, praying only to reach the shelter quickly. But stepping into the bunker was stepping into a trap from which there was no escape. Every corner was monitored by cameras, and all communication with the outside world was cut off. The only information they received was the doomsday narrative fed to them by Manurva. That very night, Manurva initiated Phase 2. The bunker was equipped with a massive seismic isolation system, which could also be used in reverse to create powerful vibrations. At Manurva's command, her team made the entire bunker shake violently, accompanied by blaring alarms. Staff members then broadcast pre-recorded screams and cracking sounds through hidden speakers to create an immersive disaster atmosphere. But that wasn't enough. Manurva knew that during an earthquake, what often causes the most panic is falling dust. She had prepared 2 tons of dust, which was released from various vents during the tremors. Woken from their sleep, the disoriented residents had no capacity to think clearly and simply followed Manurva's instructions. To heighten their fear, stairwells were deliberately blocked by collapsed debris, forcing everyone to use the elevators. It's common knowledge to avoid elevators during an explosion, so when the elevator malfunctioned, it seemed entirely plausible. Manurva triggered the emergency brake at the last second, bringing the elevator to a safe stop. Having survived this near-death experience, the billionaires cherished their lives even more, making them easier for Manurva to manipulate. Once they staggered into the dome, Manurva played them a pre-recorded film, an apocalyptic movie she had commissioned from a renowned director at great expense. Every detail was crafted for maximum realism, with each frame polished over 2 years. The performance was a resounding success. The billionaires were completely convinced that the world outside was gone. However, while Manurva and her team celebrated, Asia was hiding in a bathroom, quietly looking at a smartphone. It was a memento from her sister Anna, which Max had risked bringing into the bunker. It was filled with photos and videos of him and Anna. As she looked at the screen, her eyes welled with tears. It was her only connection to her sister. Lost in her grief, she heard a strange noise from the next stall. It sounded like someone was struggling. She forced the door open and found a resident attempting suicide. Thankfully, Asia's timely intervention prevented a tragedy. At that moment, Manurva announced that the residences were now safe and everyone could return to their rooms. In reality, the doctor at the bunker had discovered the situation, and Manurva sent everyone back to prevent a death from complicating her fraud. Although they returned to their rooms, the residents were still shaken. The terror had broken through their psychological defenses. Raphael, who suffered from a severe anxiety disorder, was triggered by the fear and rushed to the kitchen, frantically stuffing food into his mouth to calm himself. A staff member saw him and ordered him to stop. When Raphael ignored him, another guard tasered him and pinned him to the floor like a prisoner. Seeing this, Max immediately ordered them to let his father go. The guards refused and threatened him. Max's 3 years in prison had taught him never to back down in such situations. He swiftly attacked, easily overpowering the guards. He seized the taser and would have done more damage if Raphael hadn't pleaded with him to calm down. As Max stood up, he found himself surrounded by security guards, their eyes filled with menace. Thinking fast, he loudly demanded to know what they were doing, which made them back off. But the plot against them was far from over. The next day, security guards knocked on everyone's doors asking for their blood type before forcibly taking some of them away, including Falcon's wife, Mimi. A frantic Asia tried to stop them, asking what was happening, but they coldly pushed her aside. She could only watch as her stepmother was taken away. Max had been following secretly, witnessing the entire scene, and a strong sense of suspicion began to grow within him. He found Asia and demanded she return the phone he had given her for safekeeping. However, Asia told him that she despised its contents, had destroyed the SIM card, and thrown the phone in the trash. Max was furious and helpless. The longer he stayed in the bunker, the more a gnawing unease settled in his heart. Meanwhile, Mimi and the others who had been taken discovered they all had AB blood type. The doctor explained that the security chief who had gone outside needed an urgent operation and required their blood. Mimi was confused. She remembered the doctor saying the man wasn't seriously injured. Why the sudden need for surgery? The doctor coldly replied that her initial assessment was wrong. Unconvinced by this flimsy excuse, Mimi and the others remained skeptical. As if sensing their doubt, the security chief, his body covered in grotesque burns and lesions, was carried past them on a stretcher. The horrifying sight shocked them, and their suspicion was replaced by terror. This was exactly what Manurva wanted. After this incident, the bunker's residents would be even more certain of the hostile world outside, ensuring they would remain compliant. Shortly after, a shaken Mimi left the medical bay and told Asia what had happened, igniting the deepest fears in everyone. If even a highly trained staff member couldn't survive out there, then no one would ever be able to leave this underground prison. Manurva watched their panicked expressions on the monitor, another satisfied smile on her face as her team celebrated another successful performance. However, the doctor was beginning to have second thoughts. She confessed she no longer wanted to be part of the deception. She had become a doctor to save lives, not to torture people for a scam. As she tried to leave, Manurva stopped her, trying to justify their actions and persuade her to stay. But the doctor's mind was made up. She promised Manurva she would never reveal a word about the bunker. For Manurva, such an empty promise was worthless. Their argument was witnessed by the head of technology, who was also Manurva's younger brother. He decided to eliminate the risk, and just like that, the man killed the doctor. From that moment on, the scam began to spiral out of Manurva's control. The next day, during lunch, an announcement called everyone to a gathering in the dome. When they arrived, they found it had been set up for a memorial service, with photos of the security chief and the doctor displayed in the center. This was another huge shock, especially for Mimi and the others who had just seen the doctor the day before. Manurva announced that the security chief had died from radiation poisoning, while the doctor had taken her own life, unable to cope with the psychological pressure. While the story was a stretch, it was believable in their current circumstances. Manurva told them that in a crisis like this, hope was the key to survival. Finally, using the security chief's death as a pretext, she declared that the bunker would be permanently sealed, not to be reopened for another 10 years. This announcement caused an uproar, but Manurva ignored it and continued, turning her attention to Max and his father. She accused Raphael of breaking into the kitchen to steal food, and then, with Max's help, assaulting a security guard and stealing his taser. Manurva framed their actions as a grave threat to the safety and resources of the community. She demanded that Max bring the taser to her office within 10 minutes and apologize. Max paid little attention to her accusations. His feeling of unease was growing stronger, and he was convinced that in a place like this, possessing a weapon was the only way to ensure his survival. Meanwhile, Manurva was already moving on to her next target, Falcon. As a wealthy Argentine Jewish tycoon, Falcon had been born with a silver spoon. He started investing in emerging sectors with his family's backing at the age of 20, and within a few years became a dominant force in multiple industries. He now owned 64 companies operating in over 40 countries, with a fortune so vast it was unimaginable. This enormous wealth gap was the root of Manurva's resentment. She believed the rich were constantly exploiting and deceiving society, creating a rigid class system where the poor had no chance to rise. The best they could do was protest in the streets with signs, only to be swallowed up again by the daily grind, as they would starve if they didn't work under the thumb of the wealthy. So, Manurva decided to fight back on her own terms by infiltrating their world. The plan was easier said than done. When she first proposed the scam, someone raised a valid point. These billionaires have families and businesses. They are never without their phones. Their sudden disappearance would surely arouse suspicion. Manurva was prepared for this. When signing the contracts, she required each billionaire to pre-record a farewell video or draft an email or text message, stating they were going abroad for medical treatment due to health reasons. Once she gave the signal to enter the bunker, these messages would be sent out, preventing their families and business partners from contacting them unless absolutely necessary. But this alone wouldn't deter a persistent few. Manurva had a solution for that too. Her brother, the technology head, had developed an advanced AI program. By collecting all their phones, the AI program could take control. With a vast database of information on each billionaire, the AI program could perfectly replicate their voices and speech patterns. If someone called, the AI could even generate a virtual avatar for a basic video chat. The AI program would also keep their social media accounts active, making it nearly impossible for anyone to suspect they were missing. With the AI program, Manurva believed the billionaire's disappearance would go unnoticed forever. Elsewhere, Asia found an opportunity to ask a guard where the trash chute led, claiming she had lost a bracelet her sister had given her. The guard took her through a staff-only corridor to the trash compaction area, a dark metal room filled with debris and the smell of decay. Asia immediately started digging and soon found the trash bag from her room. She quickly retrieved the phone and hid it in her clothes. A second after she left, the compactor roared to life, crushing everything inside. Asia thought she had been seamless, but the guard noticed something. He asked if she had just retrieved a phone. Asia denied it, but he was certain. Seeing she couldn't hide it any longer, Asia showed him the phone, explaining it was a memento from her sister, filled with videos of Anna before she died. Once the guard confirmed there was no SIM card, he deemed it harmless and let the matter go. He and Asia started talking about her sister, and he learned that Max was her boyfriend and the one involved in the fatal hit and run. The guard was at a loss for words, but suggested there might be a misunderstanding and that she should talk to Max about it. At the same time, in another part of the bunker, Max had failed to return the taser to Manurva's office within the allotted time. She sent a guard to retrieve it. Max was startled by the intruder, his demeanor instantly becoming aggressive, as if he were back in prison facing down a rival. He bluntly stated that he felt unsafe and would not surrender his weapon. The guard, the same one Max had disarmed earlier, charged at him. It was a foolish move. Just like before, Max easily overpowered him, pinning him to the floor. Soon after, Max was summoned to Manurva's office. He had nearly beaten the guard to death. Asia, who had some medical training, had taken over as the temporary doctor after the former doctor's death and managed to save the guard's life. Manurva accused Max of attempted murder, but he claimed it was self-defense. Uninterested in the argument, Manurva asked what was making him so anxious that he would attack a guard. Max looked around and declared that the place was just a larger prison, with cameras everywhere, isolation rooms, and uniforms. Their phones and weapons were confiscated, and they were completely cut off from the world. Perhaps because Max had hit too close to the truth, Manurva suddenly grabbed the taser and gave him a harsh lesson before storming out of her office. Meanwhile, a more serious problem was brewing in the control room. Falcon's phone was ringing for the 5th time in 6 hours, with 2 of the calls being video calls. The caller was a man named Fernando, Falcon's right-hand man, who often acted on his behalf. The two were incredibly close. Fernando's persistent calls meant something major was happening on the outside that required Falcon's personal attention. Manurva's team didn't dare answer, as someone like Fernando could easily spot the AI program's flaws. As they debated how to handle it, Fernando left a video message. He looked frantic, chiding Falcon for enjoying himself in the Philippines. He said this was the most important message Falcon would ever receive, concerning the culmination of a 20-year plan. His face was alight with excitement as he urged Falcon to call back immediately. Elsewhere, Max's parents and many others were gathered in an area where staff had them line up in pairs before a row of tables. A staff member explained that the explosions had destroyed all the signal antennas, leaving only one backup communication device. Since this was the highest point in the shelter, there was a slim chance of contacting the outside world. However, the device was only 65 centimeters long, not long enough to reach outside the bunker, so it was uncertain if a signal could get through. This was, of course, intentional. The technology head had calculated that only such a cruel setup would force them to accept the harsh reality of their complete isolation. After many failed attempts, the residents grew desperate, wondering if there were any other survivors left in the world. Falcon, however, remained silent throughout the entire ordeal, which infuriated Manurva. With Fernando calling repeatedly, they urgently needed to collect more data on Falcon, but his silence gave them nothing to work with. Manurva ordered a staff member to pressure Falcon. The staffer asked Falcon if there was anything he wanted to say if they managed to make contact. Finally, Falcon spoke. He took a piece of paper from his pocket with 7 names on it, explaining they were his dearest friends whom he was forced to abandon because of the war. He expressed a deep desire to apologize to them, especially Fernando. It was as if a dam had broken. Falcon began recounting stories of his past with these friends. He confessed that despite his immense wealth, which to him was just a number, he couldn't save the people he cared about most. His voice choked with emotion. He then looked at Rafael, telling him he was now his only friend in the world and promised to stand by him no matter what. He explained that he didn't admire wealthy people, but courageous ones. Rafael had shown immense courage. The car accident 3 years ago had sent Falcon's life into a downward spiral, and Rafael had been forced to choose between justice and family. By choosing to testify against his own son, Rafael had pulled Falcon back from the brink of collapse, and their unbreakable friendship was forged in that moment. Just then, voices crackled through the communication device. A spark of hope ignited in everyone. They managed to make contact and learned they were speaking to a private plane with 11 passengers, including 2 children. The voice on the other end was desperate, begging for permission to land. This, too, was staged by Manurva. She had manufactured this communication to let Falcon and the others hear firsthand how people on the outside were perishing, extinguishing any desire they might have to leave. As the voice on the device faded into silence, a cold despair settled over them all. At that moment, Fernando sent another message to Falcon, his tone now impatient from the lack of response. He warned that if Falcon didn't call back, he would fly to the Philippines to find him. Manurva and her team realized they were losing control. To prevent their scam from being exposed, they had no choice but to answer the next call. The question was how to respond. Someone suggested a vague, evasive reply, but that was immediately shot down. Fernando wasn't just an employee, he was the CFO of the holding group. If his suspicions were aroused, he would use his vast resources to investigate, and their scheme would be uncovered. One team member argued that Fernando would have a hard time finding Falcon among the 7,000 islands of the Philippines, but another pointed out that Fernando wouldn't need to search personally. 2 phone calls, one to the governor of the Philippines and another to Spanish customs, would quickly reveal that Falcon had never left Spain. Falcon's disappearance would become a major news story, and it wouldn't be long before the police traced him to the bunker. Just then, Fernando called again. They had to answer. The AI program's virtual avatar of Falcon appeared on the screen. Seeing him, Fernando's face lit up with excitement. He informed Falcon that a major shareholder was looking to sell their entire stake. Not knowing how to respond, Manurva's team had the AI program feign a bad signal while they scrambled to find information about this shareholder. They discovered that Falcon had been trying to acquire those shares for years. They immediately instructed the AI program to act excited. Fernando, not noticing anything amiss, continued explaining the details of the acquisition, which required Falcon's personal involvement. Of course, Manurva couldn't let Falcon leave. They tried to have Fernando act as Falcon's proxy, but they needed a plausible reason. So they had the AI program claim that Falcon was in the middle of a messy divorce with his wife and couldn't be disturbed. The shocking news caught even Fernando off guard. He expressed his sympathy and agreed to handle the deal on Falcon's behalf. But then Fernando added another detail. The shareholders' condition for the sale was that Falcon had to give up BJ3. This mysterious code name threw everyone into a panic. The technology head and his team scoured their databases but found no matches. They knew that if they couldn't solve this puzzle, Falcon's situation would be exposed. They hastily ended the call with Fernando and dedicated all their resources to deciphering BJ3. Despite their efforts, they found nothing. A sense of dread washed over Manurva. They had accomplished the impossible, building a massive bunker, creating the illusion of an apocalypse, and luring the billionaires into their trap. Was it all going to fall apart because of this strange code name? Manurva refused to accept defeat. She would not go back to her former life of poverty and humiliation. Memories flooded her mind. Her father had left when she was 12 and her brother was only 6. Without a father, they were relentlessly bullied at school. Kids would draw on them and mock them for being fatherless. They would come home hoping for comfort from their mother, only to find an empty house. At first, Manurva told herself their mother was just out shopping, but she never returned. For 2 days, Manurva and her brother survived on boiled eggs. Then, Manurva found a note on the fridge. Their mother wrote that she wasn't cut out to be a mother and could no longer raise them. The note shattered the last remnants of hope in the siblings' hearts. They were taken by social services and placed in an orphanage, where officials tried to separate them to increase their chances of adoption. But the siblings resisted so fiercely that the staff eventually gave up on them, and no family ever came forward. After a year, Manurva realized that if they didn't change their circumstances, their lives would be ruined. The two began to study maniacally. With scholarships, they could finally be free. Fueled by this desperate ambition, her brother earned 3 doctorates in engineering, physics, and mathematics by the age of 24. Manurva completed her PhD in civil engineering, specializing in large-scale construction. After graduating, she worked on projects like cross-sea tunnels, elevated bridges, and even a high-speed desert railway. These projects generated over $1 billion in profit, yet her bonus was a meager $20,000. It was then that her hatred for the rich solidified. She believed that as long as capitalists were at the top, exploiting everyone below, she would be trapped in debt forever. In that moment, a radical idea was born. She would scam the billionaires. She designed the bunker, charging each wealthy resident between 40 and 80 million for a spot. Now, with everything just beginning, Manurva would not let it all crumble. Fernando's calls felt like a death knell. As her team scrambled for answers, a search result caught their attention. The AI program had found an electronic patent for a revolutionary invention called Boston and Jackson, with the codename BJ. Then, on Max's phone, they found a video in which Anna referred to her beloved horse as BJ3, meaning the third generation of the BJ family. Manurva was convinced that Fernando's BJ3 was the horse, a symbolic insult from the shareholder directed at Falcon. Her brother, however, believed it was the patent. They argued fiercely. A wrong move would expose their entire operation. Manurva insisted that for an aging billionaire like Falcon, one more patent would mean little. It had to be the horse. Just then, Fernando called again. The brother, swayed by his sister's conviction, relented. The AI program, as Falcon, told Fernando that after a long internal struggle, he had decided to give up his daughter's horse. He explained that seeing it brought back too much pain. They had gambled correctly. The mysterious code was the horse. Fernando said he understood. But then he added another complication. The transaction required the horse's pedigree certificate, which was in Falcon's safe. He needed the combination. Manurva's team froze. That was something they couldn't find online. They had the AI program stall, promising to give Fernando the combination the next day, buying them time to get it from Falcon. Meanwhile, Max stumbled upon a satellite earpiece on the basketball court floor. He recognized it as belonging to one of the security guards. A gut feeling told him it was important. He put it in his ear and, to his surprise, overheard a conversation between his father and Falcon. The eavesdropping didn't last long. The control room staff quickly detected the breach and cut off the earpiece's connection. A guard rushed into the gym and demanded Max hand it over. Though he didn't uncover the bunker's secret, the incident planted a seed of doubt in Max's mind. To get the safe combination from Falcon, Manurva's team pulled out all the stops. They sent a sexy woman to approach Falcon at the bar. The plan worked, and a flirtatious rapport quickly developed between them. But just then, Max walked in. Unwilling to share the same space, Falcon promptly left, with the sexy woman following his smelly butt close behind. She invited him to her room for a more in-depth conversation, and he agreed, hoping to enjoy a free hormone yoga session. Unbeknownst to them, Max's mother witnessed the exchange and immediately told Falcon's wife, Mimi. Enraged, Mimi gathered a few friends and marched off to confront the sexy woman. Watching from the control room, Manurva realized time was running out and instructed the sexy woman to act fast. The sexy woman told Falcon she was an expert in body language, able to detect lies through subtle tells. Falcon was skeptical. To prove her ability, the sexy woman proposed a game, but not a hormone game yet. She asked Falcon to write down the true answers to her questions on a notepad while she tried to guess if he was telling the truth. She said if she was wrong, she would be his for the night. Falcon readily agreed. The sexy woman started with innocuous questions. With the help of hidden cameras, she could clearly see Falcon's written answers, making her guesses appear miraculously accurate. After this warm-up, she asked the crucial question, the combination to his safe. This time, Falcon didn't write anything down. He simply recited a 7-digit number. In the control room, Manurva's team ran a data analysis and concluded there was a 60% probability it was the real code. They decided to risk it. Falcon then revealed his notepad. It was blank. He explained that he never writes down passwords, keeping them only in his head, and confirmed that the number he gave was indeed his safe combination. This sent Manurva's team into a euphoric celebration. Of course, Falcon would not get his prize. Just then, his wife Mimi burst into the room. Seeing the two of them together, she was overcome with grief and fury. She announced she was ending their broken marriage. Falcon was filled with regret, the feeling eerily similar to the day he lost his daughter. Devastated, he went to Asia's room and saw the video she was watching. When he learned Max had brought the phone into the bunker, the rage he had suppressed for years erupted. He found Max and brutally attacked him. Falcon roared that Max had not only taken his daughter, but had also killed his wife. Through Falcon's furious shouts, Max learned the devastating truth. Anna's mother, unable to bear the grief of losing her daughter, had taken her own life. Max was stunned by this revelation, passively taking Falcon's punches. Just then, Max's mother intervened, pulling Falcon away. Realizing he had lost control, Falcon calmed down, but the pain of losing his daughter and wife was too much. He could never forgive Max. But then Max's mother did something shocking. She hugged Falcon tightly. She confessed that she and Raphael had been separated for years and that she had been in love with Falcon for a long time. Now that Mimi was leaving him, she could finally be with him openly. The next day, despite having Falcon's safe combination, Manurva's team was on edge. Some worried it was a lie, a number Falcon made up just to get closer to the sexy woman. There was no way to be sure, but they were too deep in to turn back. If it was real, they were on the verge of an unprecedented victory. Fernando would be completely convinced, and they could use his trust to start siphoning funds on a massive scale. The price of failure was equally steep. All their efforts would be for nothing, their scam exposed, and they would all face life in prison. Soon, Fernando arrived at Falcon's mansion and walked straight to the safe. Just as Manurva's team was about to relay the 7-digit code, Fernando prompted them for an 8-digit one. A wave of doubt washed over them. The code they had was only 7 digits. Someone suggested Fernando might be mistaken, but they had no choice but to proceed. They gave him the 7-digit number. Fernando recognized it as his goddaughter Anna's birthday. After entering the 7 digits, he keyed in an 8th one himself. The safe clicked open. The control room erupted in the most jubilant cheers they had ever let out. Their gamble had paid off. Manurva told Fernando that after acquiring the shares, he was to fly immediately to Bangkok and acquire a specific company within 72 hours. She described it as a once-in-a-lifetime unicorn company whose assets would multiply 100-fold in just 3 years, calling it a defenseless fawn that would be devoured if he didn't act quickly. In reality, the company was a shell corporation registered by Manurva's team. Once Fernando made the purchase, the money would be laundered through over 150 companies worldwide before being secretly consolidated in a Swiss bank account, making it virtually untraceable. Meanwhile, Max's suspicion had been growing ever since he found the earpiece. He realized the surveillance system in the bunker was far more extensive than he imagined, with cameras even hidden in their private rooms. He spotted a hidden camera disguised as a decorative item. He didn't act immediately. Instead, he went to Manurva and asked why there were so many cameras. Manurva claimed it was for everyone's safety, explaining that if bad news from the surface continued, their stay could extend beyond 10 years. In such a scenario, some might resort to reducing the population to conserve resources. She argued the cameras were necessary to prevent the bunker from descending into a lawless, dog-eat-dog world. Although her logic seemed sound, Max remained unconvinced. The place felt more and more like a high-security prison. Elsewhere, Mimi suddenly collapsed. Asia rushed to her side and after a quick examination determined it was hepatic encephalopathy. The only treatment was dialysis, but the bunker had no dialysis machine. Asia could only administer antibiotics to alleviate the symptoms, but it was a temporary fix. Without proper medical equipment, Mimi would not survive for long. Upon learning her condition, a weak Mimi begged Asia not to let Falcon near her, saying she hated the man who had betrayed her. Shortly after, Falcon learned about Mimi's condition. The thought of losing another wife filled him with a sense of grief and helplessness, and he began to mutter obsessively about saving her. At the same time, Max pulled Asia into a bathroom and locked the door. He took out a series of cards with words written on them, instructing her not to make a sound. Through the cards, he told her that they were being watched by Manurva's people and pointed to his wristband, indicating it was a listening device. The shock was so great that Asia let out an audible gasp, immediately alerting Manurva's team, who began to monitor their conversation. Realizing they were exposed, Max remained calm and gestured for Asia to play along. They began to speak in vague, flirtatious terms, leading the eavesdroppers to believe they were engaged in an intimate moment. Unsure if the listeners were still there, Max told Asia to come to his room in an hour, using suggestive language to make it sound like a rendezvous. The listeners in the control room exchanged knowing glances, commenting that Max was now involved with his late girlfriend's sister, and they stopped paying attention. Finally, Max found his father and told him that Asia would be coming to his room, asking him to keep it a secret from Falcon. Though confused, Raphael agreed. An hour later, Asia arrived at Max's room as planned. Max pretended to get intimate with her, positioning themselves to block the view of the hidden camera. This, of course, aroused the suspicion of the monitors, who realized Max had discovered the camera. But recalling his earlier conversation with Manurva, they dismissed it as him just wanting privacy with Asia and left them alone. In reality, with music playing softly, the two were whispering. Max learned from Asia that Mimi's condition was critical, and the only way to save her was with a dialysis machine. According to the bunker's map, there was a hospital just 5 kilometers away that might still have a working machine. A plan formed in Max's mind. He would don a protective suit, venture outside, and retrieve a dialysis machine for Mimi. Asia was hesitant, believing the outside world was too dangerous. The round trip would take at least 4 hours, and Max might not survive. More importantly, Manurva would never allow it. Max knew all this and told Asia that was why he needed her help. After much hesitation, Asia agreed to help him. Outside the bunker, Fernando had arrived at an office building in Bangkok and found the supposed unicorn company. To make the scam convincing, Manurva's team had established the company 3 years prior and had been paying corporate taxes to make it look legitimate. But years of business experience made Fernando suspicious. The CFO was casually eating instant noodles at his desk, and the other employees seemed busy but were doing nothing of substance. He sensed it was a shell company. He called Falcon to share his concerns, but the voice on the phone was dismissive, insisting on the company's potential and urging him to acquire it for 850 million euros. While Fernando was on the phone, Max and Asia put their plan into action. Max had noticed that all the signs in the bunker led to recreational areas, as if deliberately hiding the escape routes. After a thorough search, he found an emergency exit sign deliberately obscured in a remote corner. This confirmed his suspicions. He knew he had to disable the surveillance system to get to the hidden door. The obvious solution was to create a short circuit. With Asia's help, Max gathered some tools. They used a dumbbell to drive a knife into a wall, then a bottle opener to pry out the plaster and a pair of tweezers to access the electrical cables inside. Max successfully shorted the wiring, and the entire surveillance and security network went down. On the phone with the fake Falcon, Fernando's connection suddenly stuttered and then displayed the AI program's name. Manurva's team was caught off guard by the short circuit. It took them 2 minutes to reboot the system. They immediately scanned all the bunker's wiring for the source of the problem, but found nothing. Furious, Manurva ordered a full inspection of every wire. But the priority was the deal with Fernando. They reconnected with him using the AI program. The interruption had made Fernando deeply suspicious, and he was ready to leave Bangkok. Manurva's team couldn't let that happen. The virtual Falcon insisted he had already booked the presidential suite for Fernando and urged him to meet with the company's CEO before leaving. Fernando was persuaded to stay one more night. But as soon as he got back to his hotel, Falcon called again, saying he had made a reservation for him at a restaurant so he could experience the local cuisine. Reluctantly, Fernando went as told. There, he walked into another trap. While Manurva's team was focused on Fernando, the system alerted them that Max and Asia had just pried open their wristband trackers. A subordinate reported it to Manurva, who, connecting it with their previous behavior, assumed they just wanted more privacy for another intimate session and told her team not to worry. The priority was securing the 800 million from Fernando. In their room, Max told Asia he would sneak out of the bunker at dawn while everyone was asleep. Meanwhile, Fernando arrived at the restaurant. As he was about to order, he noticed a beautiful, tearful young girl nearby, another of Manurva's setups. Her vulnerable appearance immediately garnered his sympathy. Then, on Manurva's cue, the girl spoke a few words in Spanish. Hearing his native language, Fernando's interest was piqued. Seeing that the bait was taken, Manurva instructed the girl via an earpiece to move to the balcony, creating an opportunity for Fernando to approach her. He fell for it, asking her what was wrong. She then spun a carefully crafted sob story. He decided to stay, becoming her protector for the night. From the control room, Manurva smirked. On her command, the actress swapped Fernando's drink with one laced with a mild stimulant. Unsuspecting, he drank it. The drug, combined with the girl's charm, made him feel euphoric and energized. He felt like the king of the world. Just then, the DJ played his favorite song, the one he always played after a successful acquisition. Exhilarated, Fernando jumped onto the dance floor. The entire crowd seemed captivated by his moves, cheering him on. He was completely lost in the moment, never suspecting that the entire nightclub was a stage and the cheering crowd was composed of actors, all part of Manurva's elaborate trap. The party lasted until dawn. Fernando and the girl exchanged contact information rather than hormones, and he returned to his hotel exhausted. He was about to sleep when Falcon called, demanding he go meet the company's CEO immediately. Though his mind was foggy, he complied. After a sleepless night of partying, Fernando was in no state to think clearly. He ended up acquiring the company for 888 million and immediately initiated the wire transfer. Thinking it was all over, he finally headed back to Spain. On the plane, he idly opened his social media to look at the girl's profile, only to find her account had been deleted. He realized something was wrong. Then he saw a billboard outside the window featuring an actress who looked exactly like the girl's mother from her story. Realizing he had been scammed, he rushed back to the company's office, but it was completely empty. In a panic, he called Falcon and demanded to know why the company was a shell corporation. The voice on the other end was evasive. At that moment, Fernando became deeply suspicious. He asked Falcon what was the private nickname his family used for him. It was a name so intimate that Falcon would never forget it, even if he were drunk. The AI program, of course, had no answer. The lie was exposed. Fernando said he was calling the police, but as he dialed Interpol, the girl from the nightclub and an accomplice appeared and eliminated him. Back in the bunker, events were reaching a boiling point. Max and Asia worked together to knock out a guard. Max changed into the guard's uniform and used his fingerprints to access a restricted warehouse with Asia. They then shorted the bunker's surveillance system again. Max knew from the last time that he had a 2-minute window before the system rebooted. This was his only chance. Using materials from the warehouse, they built a crude bomb and, while the cameras were down, detonated it. The explosion threw the bunker into chaos. Max slipped into the escape tunnel, telling Asia to go back to her room. Just as the power was restored, Manurva realized Max was behind the chaos and ordered him eliminated. A guard burst into Max's room but found only Asia. He drew his gun and demanded to know where Max was. Learning he had escaped into the tunnel during the explosion, the guard furiously told Asia to come with him. But just then, Manurva appeared and told Asia to come with her instead. Mimi had just gone into cardiac arrest. Asia rushed to the medical bay and used every bit of her knowledge to try and save Mimi, but it was too late. Meanwhile, Max had reached the elevator that led to the bunker's exit. Suddenly, he heard Asia's voice over the intercom. She told him that Mimi was dead and pleaded with him not to risk his life. But Max's escape was no longer just about Mimi. He couldn't stand the oppressive despair of the bunker any longer. He believed that even a world filled with radiation and death was better than being trapped there. Then, Asia's voice changed. She confessed that she had been in love with him for a long time and that their time together in the bunker had been the happiest of her life. She couldn't imagine a life without him. The sudden confession caught Max completely off guard, but his mind was made up. After a moment of silence, Asia told him that if he didn't come back, she would come out and die with him. Without another moment of hesitation, Max stepped into the elevator. He soon arrived at the main gate. As the massive steel door slowly opened, he was met not with an orange glow, but with blinding sunlight. Outside, there were no yellow skies or scorched earth, only green hills and clear waters. In that instant, he understood everything. It had all been a lie. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.